Taxmann for inviting me once again, this time to deliver this small presentation of interplay of Section 43B Clause H with MSME Act. Right now, it is one of the hottest topic amongst tax professionals and accounting professionals. Since we have only limited time of 1 hour, so without wasting much of the time, let me straight away jump to the topic. I have already been introduced by Kriti in length, so I will simply skip this slide. So let's first understand what is the background, why Section 43B Clause H has been introduced. And prior to that, let's understand what is the role of MSME in our economy. You see, almost 1/3 of the GDP of India is based on MSME sector only. So we can understand the importance of MSME sector, why it is so much important, why the thrust of the government is on the MSME sector. Second, 45 to 50%, approximately half of our exports are contributed by MSME. So since we are exporting, we are earning foreign exchange, and that foreign exchange is going into foreign exchange reserve of our country, and 50% of the contribution as far as export is concerned is by MSME sector. Then if you look at number of units in India, then 95% of the business units which are operating in India are from MSME sector. So 1/3 of the GDP, 50% of the export, and 95% of the business units are under MSME. So obviously the focus of our government has to be on MSME sector only, right? And unless and until government supports MSME sector, we can't, take right step to become a developed economy by 2047. So what was happening? You see, in order to protect MSMEs, there is an act called as MSME Act. So as per MSME Act, if the payment to MSME supplier, what is MSME supplier? We will also deal in detail. First, understand the background. So as per MSME Act, Section 15, if a buyer does not pay its MSME supplier within the specified time, and what is the specified time? Again, we will understand that if it is not paid to MSME supplier, then that buyer is liable to pay 3 times of the bank rate, which is repo rate of RBI, and again on a compounding basis, monthly compounding basis, to its MSME vendor. Though provision was there, but it was hardly being implemented. Government tried other ways also to get it implemented. Let's say, for example, in the case of companies, a provision was introduced that you need to file MSME returns, half yearly MSME return. But still, overall, it was a lax provision, even though MSME Act is applicable, whether it is company buyer, whether it is individual buyer, whether it is firm or any other entity who is buying any supplies or any goods or getting any services from MSME sector, they are bound by MSME Act. Still, the implementation of that MSME Act was not that acceptable to community at large as it should have been. So indirectly, through Section 43B Clause H, effectively that MSME Act is being implemented. This is my understanding of this new clause, and this is the reason that Section 43B Clause H has had to be introduced by the government. So let's read what is 43B and what Clause H says, right? Notwithstanding anything contained in any other provision of this act. So 43B is a non-obstante clause. So it is basically overriding anything in the entire provision of this act, right? A deduction otherwise allowable. So again, a deduction otherwise allowable under this act in respect of, then we will jump to Clause H. So since 43B starts with this overriding clause, and also when I say overriding, it also starts with a deduction otherwise allowable. So it means if an assessee is claiming some capital expenditure, and that capital expenditure actually is not a deduction per se. Since that is not a deduction per se, there is no application of 43B as far as that capital expenditure is concerned. Some may ask, what about section 32? My dear friend, section 32 talks about allowance. It is not a deduction per se, right? So again, 32 is not covered by 43B. So notwithstanding anything contained in any other provision of this act, a deduction otherwise allowable under this act in respect of. Now, coming to clause H, a sum payable by the assessee. And who is assessee we are talking about? We are talking about the buyer assessee, right? Payable by the assessee to a micro or small enterprises. If we look at MSME Act, it not only deals with micro, it also deals with small as well as medium suppliers. But as far as 43B sub clause H is concerned, we are concerned only and only with micro and small enterprises. Again, so there should be a sum payable by the assessee, and then that sum payable should be a deduction which has been allowed or otherwise allowable to your buyer or to your client or to your assessee, right? So there has to be some deduction. First of all, it should be in a way of sum payable, and to whom? It to a micro or small enterprises. Now, what is micro, what is small, we will deal in a few minutes. Then obviously there is some due to a micro small and you need to pay it. But at the same time, what clause H says that if that amount is paid by the assessee, or in other words, by the buyer, beyond the time limit specified in section 15. So it means for time limit, again, I have to go to section 15. For micro and small definition, micro enterprises or small enterprises definition, again, I have to go to section 15. So any sum payable by the assessee to a micro or small enterprises beyond the time limit specified in section 15 of MSME Act shall be allowed. So if you read the black portion of this provision, shall be allowed only in computing the income referred to in section 28. What is section 28? Section 28 refers only to PGPP income, profit and gains from business and profession. So if let's say your assessee is a salaried person, it doesn't apply to them, right? And in any case, right? Only in computing the income referred to in section 28 of that previous year. Which previous year we are talking about? The previous year in which such payment is actually paid. So let's say take an example. The due date as per section 15 of a particular purchase is, let's say, 15th of March, and you are paying that amount on 30th of March. Since you are paying beyond the time limit specified in section 15 of MSME Act, so on what basis this deduction shall be allowed? Only in the year in which that payment has been made. So if we are talking about 30th of March, which previous year or which financial year we are talking about? The very financial year in which that payment is made. So for example, if the delivery of purchase, the delivery of goods has been made on 1st of March, due date is 15th of March, and you are making the payment on 30th of March, even though you are claiming that expense within that financial year, and that payment has also been made within that financial year. So because of clause H, that deduction shall be allowed within that financial year itself. Take another example. Date of delivery of service, of goods, or maybe it can be a date of rendering of services also, is 1st of March. Due date is 30th of March. Due date is 30th of March. You make the payment on 1st of April. In which financial year you have claimed this expenditure? Financial year 23-24. In which financial year you have made the payment? Financial year 24-25. Is this payment being made beyond the due date? Yes. Since the payment has been made beyond the due date, it will be allowed only in the financial year 24-25. Had it been made within the financial year 23-24, there would have been no disallowance, right? And interestingly, now what does this blue highlighted text in bracket connotes? irrespective of the previous year in which the liability to pay such sum was incurred by the assessee according to the method of accounting regularly employed by him. So let's take another example. Let's say there is an invoice of 1st of March 2024. Since I'm talking about date of invoice, I'm also assuming that the date of delivery of goods or services is on that particular date, right? So let's say there is a invoice of 1st of March 2024. The due date as per MSME Act, the due date as per MSME Act is on 15th of April 2024. So what is the problem? What is the issue here? The deduction or the which assessee is claiming is in financial year 23-24 itself, but the due date is in next financial year, that is financial year 24-25. Now it is a very interesting provision. Now if you make the payment on or before 15th of April, which is the due date under section 15 of MSME Act, then the deduction shall be allowed within this financial year itself, 23-24. If let's say that payment has been made on 16th of April, then sorry, this deduction shall not be allowed in this financial year. It shall be allowed in 24-25 only. So not only you have to see the due date, you have to see whether this due date is falling in next financial year, and whether this payment, even if it is due in the next financial year, has it been made within the time allowed or not, as per section 15. If not, then only the financial year in which that payment has been made shall be that year in which that deduction shall be allowed. So this is the basic of 43B. But please appreciate, 43B shall come into picture only when we have decided our due date within section 15 of MSME Act. So in order to understand what is micro, we have to go to MSME Act. In order to understand what is small enterprises, we have to go in MSME Act. In order to understand what is due date or time limit, which has been referred by section 43B, again it is in MSME Act. So for all practical purposes, you have to first travel to MSME Act, find out whether your supplier is a micro or not, and if yes, what is the due date, second, and third, what is the date of payment, whether that payment has been made within the due date as per section 15 or not. So these three things you have to first figure out. If all the three things are in your hand, then you come back to 43B and then you decide whether it is allowable in a particular financial year or another financial year. I think in the meantime, Rahul ji is saying, what about the provision made on 31st of March 2000? I believe he may be asking about 2024. Rahul ji, please, you need to confirm whether you are talking about financial year 23-24 or 22-23. Then how to calculate due date in this case? Mohit ji, I will be taking up in a few minutes the detailed slide, how to compute due date as per section 15 of MSME Act. And I will suggest all the participants to kindly stick to one. I will in fact suggest that you stick to question and answer window only to raise your question. You see, it's very difficult for me to jump from one window to another window in order to understand. I mean, to appreciate where the question is being asked by our participants. So I will suggest that you kindly raise your question only in the question and answer which is called as Q&A window. And Rahul ji say, yes, it was 24. I will cover it up, Rahul ji. Section 43B continued. So this is the second slide. Now there is a proviso within section 43B, which says, provided that nothing contained in this section, let's forget about the red portion, provided that nothing contained in this section shall apply in relation to any sum which is actually paid by the assessee on or before the due date, applicable in this case for furnishing the return of income under section 139(1) in respect of the previous year. So in summary, if I summarize it, it basically says that let's say a particular expenditure is not allowed because of certain clauses of 43B. But let's say because you have not made, or the certain conditions have not been fulfilled, or the payment has not been made. But let's say you make the payment of the respective disallowance on or before the due date of filing of income tax return. So let's say there is an expenditure which, because of other clauses of 43B, I mean any clause of 43B, is disallowed by 43B within the financial year 23-24. Now, what is the due date of filing income tax return for 23-24? Depending upon the assessee. It may be 31st July, it may be October, it may be December, or whatever it may be. So, as per this proviso, if this payment is made on or before the due date, that the disallowance shall not apply. The disallowance shall not apply. But by adding this red part in this proviso, this benefit has also been taken down as far as clause H is concerned. So, even if you make the payment to MSME after the due date, but prior to the, I mean, after the due date means after the due date of section 15, but prior to due date of section 139(1), the income tax return due date, still it will not be allowed. Still it will not be allowed. So in our example, let's say, for example, the due date was on 31st of March, you make the payment on 1st of April, even though the date of payment of 1st of April is prior to the due date of filing of income tax return, shall even still it shall not be allowed because of this exception. So basically, proviso is what? Proviso is an exception, but it is an exception to an exception. Appreciate it. So proviso is an exception to the main provision, but within this exception, they have again added an exception. So exception to exception. So the benefit of making the payment prior to the due date of filing of return and getting it allowed is not available as far as payments to MSME is concerned. Now, as per explanation 4, for the purpose of this section, MSME, I mean micro small enterprise, mean as defined in section 2, the relevant subclause or subclause of section 2 of MSME Act needs to be referred, right? So the meaning assigned to in clause H of section 2 for micro MSME Act 2016, small means a meaning assigned to in clause H, clause M of section 2 of MSME Act. So most of the analysis I've already explained to you, but there are certain more things which we also need to appreciate. Since this provision comes into effect from 1st of April 2023 only, so any outstanding prior to 1st of April 2023, even if that outstanding is from MSME, is not covered by this provision, is not covered by this provision. And again, there is one more reason behind that. You see, if we read the language of section 43B, a sum which is otherwise allowable where? Otherwise allowable within this financial year. I mean, the financial year in which you are claiming the deduction, right? And since this new provision was not in effect in previous financial year, so that's why this new clause is not applicable to those outstanding also. So, in crux, any outstanding prior to 1st of April 2023, even if that outstanding is still outstanding as on 31st of March 2024, it shall not be covered by this provision, right? Again, it is irrelevant. Obviously, I'm talking about expenditure from effect from 1st of April 2023 only. It is irrelevant in which financial year you have booked this expenditure. You may book in 23-24, you may book in 24-25 according to the method of accounting you are employed. I mean, you are using. But if the payment is being made beyond the due date, then the year in which the payment is made shall be the year in which this deduction shall be allowed, right? So in simplified term, I can say, if you are paying within due date, it shall be allowed on accrual basis. If you are paying beyond due date, it shall be allowed only on cash basis. On cash basis, I can simplify it in this manner. Neeraj ji has raised a very, a very important question, and it is being discussed in the entire professional circles. That payment means actual payment, whether issue of check shall be covered by or not if it is cleared within 90 days of the date of check. You see, actually, it's a very litigative, it may become a litigative point, right? Again, this answer needs to be, this question needs to be answered on a facts to facts basis, right? I cannot generalize it in the sense, even though if you look at other provisions of law, any other provision of law, if I have issued a check, let's say if we talk about Negotiable Instrument Act, if I have issued a check, it is a tendering of the payment, and the recipient can present that check within 90 days. If there is one or two cases in the entire financial year where it has happened, I can understand that. But what if you have 50 suppliers, and all the 50 suppliers you have issued the check, and all the 50 suppliers are having those checks for 90 days with them in their drawers, and on 19th or 85th day they have presented that check in bank? Do you think any assessing officer and any authority is going to accept your argument? No, no. So my humble suggestion is, do not try to make this kind of tax planning at your end. But yes, legally speaking, if I have issued you a check, it is a payment. It is a payment, because nowhere it is written that payment means only when the payment is debited from your bank, right? So again, it's a very factual question. So if you try to misuse this provision, you may be in soup tomorrow. But yes, if it is a genuine case, you can prove beyond doubt that yes, I had issued this check to my supplier, and if he has not presented, it's not my problem. But it may be a one or two case only, right? And in today's, and let's say till now you were making all the payments through NEFTs, out of sudden now you have started using checks. Again, it needs to be evaluated, right? So legally speaking, yes, it is possible. Practically, and looking at all the things, my humble suggestion, not to fall for this trap. Again, Neeraj Gupta ji says provision for audit fee has been at 31/3/2024 and audit has been completed on 31. Sir, I will take up this question. We will first let's first understand what section 15 is all about, how to compute the due date, what are the relevant date, what is appointed date, what is date of acceptance, what is deemed date of acceptance, so on and so forth. So first, let's understand what is micro enterprise and what is small enterprise. Already we are, I believe, 27 or 26 minutes past our allotted time. So let me wrap it up quickly. So micro enterprise mean as per section 7. Small enterprise mean as per section 7. So 2 actually is not defining anything. It is actually referring to section 7. 71A1, 71B1, 7A2, 71A2 or 71B subclause 2. So let's see what are these clauses. What is section 7A talks about. Now, interestingly, if you look at section 7, only two types of activities are there. Only two types of activities are there. One is manufacturing. One is manufacturing. And second is services and services. So what is manufacturing? In the case of enterprises engaged in the manufacture or production of goods pertaining to an industry specified in the Schedule 2 industries. But at the same time, if you look at definition of enterprises, it not only talking about the manufacturer, it is also talking about the business concerns who are dealing in activities which are related to manufacturing. So there may be a case of factory, there may be a case of shop also who is engaged in manufacturing activity. So like one of the question has been raised by Rahul Garg that gold and silvery jewelry maker, will they covered under manufacturer or producer? It doesn't make any difference whether you are manufacturer, whether you are producer. because the definition is wide enough in MSME Act to cover both. Obviously, that activity should be covered by Industrial Development Regulation Act. And actually, the list in Industrial Development Act is quite wide. It's quite wide. So you need to first check whether that activity is covered by IDFI, I mean Industrial Development Regulation Act, or not, and then whether they have deployed a factory or whether they are producing in a shop only. Both are covered. So if I look at Section 7, it is talking about only two activities: manufacturing and services. Trading is nowhere. If you go to the history of MSME Act, even services were not there. Right? Why this? Because in the excise era, manufacturer or producer or whatever name you can call it, they were not getting their payments on time. That is why this act was introduced in actually order to protect them. Maybe with the passage of time, they may introduce trading, but as of now, only manufacturer and service provider. Chartered accountant is a service provider. Cost accountant is a service provider. Any service provider is covered, provided they are registered. So manufacturing and services are only covered. Trading is not covered. I am again repeating it. As per Section 7, trading is not covered. But there may be a situation, a particular person is a manufacturer as well as trader. Then yes, he is covered. A particular manufacturer can be particular person can be a service provider as well as trader. Yes, it shall be covered. Now the question is, can government change these categories? Let's see what does the provision says. If I look at Section 7, subsection 9, notwithstanding anything contained in so and so act, while classifying any class or enterprises under subsection 1, so class or classes of enterprises under subsection 1 vary from time to time the criteria of investment, and also consider criteria or standard in respect of employment or turnover of the enterprises. So basically what it says, it basically talking about the criteria basis which these two type of enterprises shall be classified. It doesn't mean that new class can be added at all. Subsection 9 does not give government any power to notify traders as a small or medium enterprise. I know there must be a lot of questions that registration has been allowed and so on and so forth. We will discuss that also. But only what they can do is, in order to define, specify the criteria that whether you are micro or small, but within the manufacturing activity or within the services activity, the criteria can be based on plant and machinery. The criteria can be based on standards of employment or turnover. So the three criteria they can use. Right now, from 2020, only two criteria have been specified. So if I look at the notification number 1702, capital E in bracket, the revised criteria as follows. Till now, if I look at manufacturing or services activity, only plant and machinery was the criteria. And again, those criteria were different for manufacturing activity and service activity. But from 1st of July 2020, that difference has been diminished. Now, whether you are manufacturing activity, you are engaged in manufacturing activity, or whether you are engaged in service activity, in both the cases, these criteria shall apply. And please appreciate, now there are two criteria. First is investment in plant and machinery, and second is turnover criteria. Both the criteria needs to be met. These are not optional that one of the criteria is met, so then you are micro. No, you need to meet criteria of investment in plant and machinery as well as criteria in turnover. If both the criteria are met, only then you can be called as micro or small, as the case may be. So taking an example, if there is an enterprise who is engaged in services or manufacturing activity, or either of them, has an investment in plant and machinery of 50 lakh, but turnover is 6 crore. In that case, since one of the condition is not fulfilled, one of the test have failed. So in that case, it will not be a micro. It will become a small. Because if I look at small, then yes, turnover is less than 50, as well as investment in plant and machinery is less than 10 crore. So in that case, both the condition needs to be tested. And if let's say that condition is also failed, then they will move to the next category, which is called as medium. Since we are only talking about 43B clause H, that is not our topic of today's discussion. So question was, can traders be called as a micro enterprises? You see the confusion which is prevalent in the industry is because of this memorandum of 2nd of July 2021. Please appreciate the background, the history through which this office memorandum was issued. Please appreciate office memorandum is not a notification. It's not a notification. It's like a trade notice, right? It's a trade facilitation only. You see, since the focus of the government is on MSME, and as per MSME, only manufacturer and service providers are covered. But when it came to MSME lending, priority lending, because right now, as far as priority lending is concerned, up to 5 crore of rupee loan you can take without any collateral. And obviously, there are benefits in terms of interest as well. But traders were not getting that benefit. So in order to facilitate that priority lending to traders also, this limited purpose registration was opened up, and only for priority sector lending. That's it. This is the only thing traders can avail as far as MSME is concerned. Since traders MSME are not covered by Section 7, traders are out. And since traders are out in in the entire MSME, so does they are out of MSME, Section 43B clause H also. And if you look at this office memorandum, these 3 NIC codes have been allotted to traders: 45, 46, and 47. Now, the question which is being asked by everyone, Neeraj also, what should I do being an auditor? What should I do? First of all, your client or your assessee should send a letter to all of their vendors asking them to tell them whether you are a small or micro enterprise or not as per MSME Act. And if yes, because simply saying yes will not suffice, they need to provide copy of certificate or at least MSME number. Now, if let's say your supplier does not provide you a certificate but provide you with a number, you can always go to MSME portal and check whether that MSME number is correct or not, whether it is falling in the category of micro or small, or whether they are a manufacturer or trader or service provider. So that is the one way. Second thing, as per 2008 office memorandum, supplier may also mention its number on the invoices also. So if let's say any supplier does not respond to your letter, so my humble suggestion is that at least send them one more reminder letter. And if let's say within the specified time of 15 days or 20 days, even then they don't respond, then your responsibility is over. So your onus will be discharged when you send the letter and followed by another reminder letter. So even if let's say they doesn't respond back, doesn't respond back, you can always look at the invoices also. There may be a possibility that vendor has mentioned its registration number on the invoice also. So using that number, you can always go back to MSME portal, Udyam portal, and check. And one more thing you need to understand, that this registration is an annual feature. It doesn't mean that once you have taken, it will be forever, because the category will change on a year basis. If you are a micro in last financial year, you may be a small in this financial year, and you may be a medium in next financial year. So this activity of getting letter, it needs to be done on an yearly basis, Now, if you look at Section 8 of MSME Act, a person who intends to establish a micro small enterprise may at his discretion. So what does Section 8 says? That the registration is optional. But I am talking about registration. Because you may be a micro, but it is not required that you should take a registration. But in order to get the benefit of MSME, you need to get yourself registered. Why? Because if I look at Section 15, which is our core topic of discussion today, there is a term which is called as supplier. And supplier means a micro small enterprises which has filed a memorandum with the authority referred to in subsection 8 of subsection 1 of section 8. So yes, in order to get the benefit, in order to compute time limit of MSME Act, it needs to be supplier. The vendor needs to be supplier as per section 2N of MSME Act. And section 2N says it needs to be registered. He needs to be registered. That supplier needs to be registered. So rather than discussing this entire section 15 in reading bare act, let's jump to the next slide, and I will explain it in a simpler way. You see, section 15 talks about 3-4 items. First, who is supplier? Supplier has already been defined in section 29N. Then it talks about appointed date. It talks about acceptance date. It talks about deemed acceptance date. So first of all, we all need to understand one concept very, very, very clearly. Invoice has no relevance in the entire section 15 of MSME Act. Invoice has no relevance in the entire MSME Act. I am again repeating, invoice has no relevance in the entire MSME Act. Then what is the relevance? What is the relevant date? Relevant date is the date of delivery of goods. Relevant date is the delivery of services, the date on which services have been delivered, the date on which goods have been delivered. It's quite possible that the goods have been delivered on 1st of April and invoice is of 10th of April. So invoice has no relevance as far as section 15 is concerned. It is the date of delivery. But please hold. There is a provision within section 15 also, where if let's say there is some dispute, there is some concern as far as supply of goods or supply of services is concerned, then you can raise objection. But my dear friend, that objection needs to be raised in writing. You see, entire section 50 hinges on only one thing: in writing. So objection needs to be raised in writing within 15 days from the date of delivery. Let's understand this. So let's say there is a date. Let's say on 1st of January you have rendered the services. And since it is an invoice of service, that invoice has been raised on 30th of January. So as per as GST Act, you can raise invoice within 30 days, right? So the relevant date for MSME Act is not 30th of January. It is 1st of January only. For section 15, all the computation shall be made. All the due date computation shall be made. My humble request to all the participants, kindly raise your question only in question and answer window, not through webinar chat window, please. Yes, MSME certificate is now called as Udyog Aadhaar. Yes, I appreciate that. So, date of service. And one more thing, since you have raised this question, if let's say your vendor is registered under the old provision, they are possessing the old number. Again, they were supposed to take new registration under Udyam. So old registration, if they are having old registration, it is not an valid registration under MSME Act. They need to obtain the new registration as per Udyam provision. So date of service, let's say, is 1st of January. So within 15 days, you need to raise your objection and in writing. So let's say if I raise the objection within 15 days, then the concept of date of acceptance shall come into picture. And what is the date of acceptance? Date of acceptance means the date on which that objection has been removed, provided that the objection was a valid objection. And how can it be a valid objection? If it is raised within 15 days, within 15 days. So let's say in this example, if let's say if the date of service was 1st of Jan and the date of objection was 16th of Jan, then there is no valid objection as per section 15, read with section 2 of MSME Act. And in that case, concept of date of acceptance shall not be relevant. Then what is the relevant date? That is called as deemed date of acceptance. Let's read what is deemed date of acceptance. So day of deemed acceptance means where no objection is made in writing by the buyer regarding acceptance of goods or services within 15 days from the date of delivery of goods or the rendering of services, the date on which actual delivery of the goods or rendering of the services has been made. So in that case, if the objection is not raised by 15th of Jan, the date of service, which is 1st of January, shall become the due date of acceptance. And from due date of acceptance, then we will compute section 15's MSME date. So, and one more thing, MSME Act talks about agreement in writing. So again, it is hinging on the writing. So if let's say there is an agreement in writing, and as per the agreement in writing, there is a specified due date of payment. So what you have to do? You have to first see what is the due date as per agreement in writing and what is the due date as per section 15. So whichever is earlier shall actually be your due date for section 15 of MSME Act. And there is no agreement. And again, there is no agreement. So as per MSME, then it will be 15 days from the date of acceptance. So again, for date of acceptance, what is relevant? Relevant is objection. Again, for removal of objection, there is no time limit. So I'm giving you a hint. For removal of objection, there is no time limit. If you raise objection on 10th of January, it can be removed even after 2 months. It can be removed even after 3 months. It can be removed even after 3 months. Again, obviously, when I'm saying objection has been removed, everything needs to be in writing. Everything needs to be in writing. You may be, as an auditor, you may also be, let's say if evidence is not available, you may also be required to write to your, supplier of your SSC, whether as per my client, he had raised this objection. Please confirm that whether any objection was raised or not, and whether this objection is still pending or not, so on and so forth. So accordingly, you have to deploy a substantial procedure for verification. But the thing is, if let's say we're talking about agreement in writing, if there is an agreement in writing, then from the date of service, there is a date of objection on 10th. Within, again, let's say that objection is removed within 15 days. Then from date of acceptance, if we look at this provision, liability of buyer to make payment, provided that in no case the period agreed between the supplier and the buyer in writing shall exceed 45 days from the date of acceptance or day of deemed acceptance. Since objection was raised within 15 days, so in case that is why the concept of deemed acceptance shall not be applicable, but the date of acceptance shall be applicable. And since the objection has been removed on 25th of Jan, so from 25th of Jan, we will compute 45 days. So from 25th January, 45 days shall end on 10th of March. So this is the due date as per MSME Act. But if I look at payment terms say it needs to be made within 60 days from the date of invoice. Now invoice was raised on 30th of Jan. So since it was raised on 30th of Jan, 60 days shall lapse on 30th of March. So as per payment term, even though the due date is 30th of March, but since as per MSME Act, the due date is 10th of March. So that is a relevant date. So that is the relevant date. And let's say there is no agreement in writing. There is no agreement in writing. Again, in this example, again, I have taken that the payment terms are 60 days, but it is a verbal commitment. There is no agreement as such in writing. So in that case, bearing everything being same, if you look at the dates, everything is same. Date of service is 1st Jan, date of objection is 10th January, date of acceptance is 25th Jan, date of invoice is also 30th Jan, date of due date as per invoice again is 30th March. But what has changed? It is the appointed date or the date of acceptance. Due date. So if I look at section 15, it says Where any supplier supply any goods or render any services to any buyer, the buyer shall make thereof on or before the agreed between and the supplier in writing. There is no agreement in this behalf before the appointed day. यानी कि जब आपके पास कोई एग्रीमेंट नहीं है तो अपॉइंटेड डेट से पहले, प्लीज अप्रिशिएट द टर्म बिफोर. एंड इफ आई टुक लुक एट the case where there is an agreement in writing, it says on or before, but it says before the appointed date. So the appointed date, let's say, is 16th of March, then payment needs to be made on by 15th of March itself. So since it's a case where no agreement exists in writing, so what is date of acceptance? It is 25th Jan. So from 25th Jan, you need to compute 16 days. Why 16 days? Let's go back to the appointed day. Appointed day means the day following immediately. Now it says following immediately. यानी कि एक दिन आगे, following immediately after the expiry of the period of 15 days from the date of acceptance. So date of acceptance plus 15 days and the next following date. So effectively, if you see both the provision, it is either 45 days from the date of acceptance or 15 days from the date of acceptance or deemed date of acceptance, as the case may be. So actually, even though appointed is 10th Feb, which is 16 days, effectively the due date as per section 15 of MSME Act shall be 9th of February only. Why 9th? Because you see this, I mean, again, you need to appreciate that it is a leap year also. In February, we have 29 days rather than 28 days. So I have explained this. I have already explained this. Buyer can be anyone other than a foreign buyer. So immediately, because we are running short of time, we also have 18 questions to answer. So I will take one or two case studies here. In fact, we can also discuss it offline if you want to. So let's say there is a supplier who is supplying services, and as per the past practice, the invoice needs to be paid within 45 days from the date of invoice. Please appreciate, there is no agreement in writing. It is only the past practice. So the date of supply is 28th of February 2024. Let's say the audit has been signed and the report date is 28th of February 2024. Date of invoice is 15th March. Date of objection 16th March. Please appreciate, since the objection has been raised on 16th March, it is beyond 15 days. So since there is objection beyond 15 days, that objection has no meaning. In that case, the concept of deemed date of acceptance shall come into picture. And what is deemed date of acceptance? The date of supply. And what is the date of supply? 28th of February. So since 28th of February is the date of delivery of services or goods, as the case may be, so the acceptance or deemed acceptance shall be 28th of February 2024. And since it is 28th of February 2024, 13th of March, because again, there is no agreement in writing, 15 days shall kick in. So 28th, 29th, 2 days, and 13 days of March. So 13th March 2024 is the due date. So that even though, interestingly, as per agreement, the due date to make the payment is beyond March. I think it will fall in April. Similarly, in case of trader, since traders are not applicable, there is no point computing these dates, right? So let's take another example: services within 13 days of invoice, and it is mentioned on invoice itself. So when I'm saying that there has to be an agreement in writing, it can connote many meaning. There can be a formal agreement in writing. There can be a PO for that. Again, PO is an agreement, nothing else. It can be mentioned on the invoice. It can be mentioned on the quotation. There can be a situation where supplier has given you the quotation, and on quotation itself it is written that from the date of invoice, the payment shall be made within 30 days or 45 days, as the case may be. And on actual invoice, that condition has not been mentioned. So if I combine both quotation as well as invoice, in that case, I will treat that quotation as agreement in writing also. So again, it's a question of facts. Now my presentation is over. Let's take all the questions one by one. I think I already have 4 minutes, but I can take this privilege and can discuss for another 10 minutes. Now, anonymous attendee says, just wanted to have insight on the below two questions. Whether interest is payable on intention money. Please appreciate one more thing, I think, which I may have skipped. Please look at the language of clause H. What it says? It says any sum payable, any sum payable. Sir, retention is not a sum payable. Retention is not a sum payable. It will become payable when that actual period has arrived. So in my humble opinion, section 43B shall not be applicable. Naresh Lakhani ji, as per Act, disallowance on account of non-payment of MSME as on 31/3/2024. So, if, as on the date of transaction, creditor's ME is registered and cancelled before 30. Whether yes, it shall be allowed. Sir, you need to understand. Let's take another example. Till 30th of March, he was not registered. On 31st of March, he is registered. So, can I give him the benefit for all the transaction I have done till 30th of March? No. There is a Supreme Court judgment under MSME Act which says that the benefit of MSME Act, section 15, is prospective only, and it shall only cover only those transactions which have been done or agreed to be done on or after the date of registration. So in your case, till 30th of March, whatever transaction was done, those are covered. Since on 31st of March, he has surrendered his registration, then those are not covered. Yes, Prasanna ji, I have already answered your question. That is a tender issued by buyer to which quotation was given by MSME PO issued. Constitute an agreement rating? Yes, it does. Vendor providing payroll service and provides service monthly as per contract, invoice will be raised on quarterly basis. How can we make payment in 60 days? For example, January, February, March. Sir, that is not a problem of MSME Act. Please appreciate, MSME Act is a special act, and it has been confirmed by Supreme Court also. It overrides any other act also. It also overrides any contractual agreement. You see, through agreement, you can either you need to create your agreement which is in conformity with the MSME Act. So you see, again, till the services are rendered, MSME Act doesn't come into picture. So you need to draft or redraw your agreement to see when the services have been rendered. But this is your case where services are being rendered on a monthly basis. Yes, in that case, you need to pay according to that also. I can't help you here. Dheeraj ji. Sir, please don't rely on social media, Sandeep ji, that it is circular. Please, you see, I'm assuming that you are a chartered accountant or maybe a tax professional. You see, tax professionals only rely only and only on notifications, circulars, right? And act. So please don't go or get distracted by this social media or something. I know actually the thing is, in that particular scenario, some trade association of Gujarat, they had made some representation that this may be deferred because we are still not ready for this particular provision. Though please appreciate, this provision is a decade-old provision, more than that. Still they are not ready. So on that news itself, somebody जैसे कहते हैं ना कि चावल परोसे लेकिन खिचड़ी मिल गई. So something has been blown out of proportion and made something else. Would communication objection has to be received by seller before end of 15 days? Yes. So if let's say delivery has been made on first, objection needs to be raised on, again you'd say question of fact. It doesn't mean that you have just simply dispatch your objection from your office on 15th and it is received by buyer on 20, it will be constituted as on 15. No, it needs to be received by the supplier by 15th itself. Neeraj says a depreciation needs to be disallowed. No, sir, it will not be disallowed. It is an allowance. It is not a deduction. Let's refer to clause 44 of Form 3CD. It has been very clearly mentioned there also that depreciation needs to be excluded for the purpose of that. Again, for clause 44. Why? Because it is an allowance, it is not a deduction. It's not an expenditure. How to determine date of service in case of continuous supply of services, such as AMC? So again, again you need to, from the facts of the case, in my humble opinion, as far as AMC is concerned, it's a continuous supply of services. Every day you are supplying the services. Every day you are supplying the service. Again, you need to figure out with your vendor when it is treated as service. Again, it's a fact. It's a question of fact. Our investment plan machine less than 1 crore, but our turnover is 10 crore. Yes, you will fall under small, not micro, because one of the condition of 5 crore is not met. Practically, we are obtaining MSM registration. The system has obtained plant or machinery from financial 2021. Is it correct? No, sir. You see, kindly go back to your MSME portal and download the fresh certificate. If you want, I can show you the fresh certificate also. For each and every financial year, they are, you see, as far as financial year 23-24 is concerned, already the certificates have been updated based on 22-23, not 22-21. I told you in the very beginning, Neerji, also, that this is an annual certification. This is an annual certification. So you need to get confirmation from your supplier on an yearly basis. Can we send email instead of letter at the time we send negative confirmation? Sir, I will suggest Dheeraj at least send 2 letters through a registered post. Because what evidence do you have that actually that letter has been received by the second party? You don't. So my humble suggestion is, you see, you can send email. I don't say that you can't send it. But there may be a situation that you have sent it, but your buyer has not acknowledged that email itself. So how will you say that it has actually been sent to them? So I am suggesting to all my clients and to you also that please send it through speed post or registered post, so that you have certain kind of proof that yes, you have discharged your onus. Practically all traders who are running their businesses have proprietorship as obtained. Sir, in that case, Neeraj, your assessee needs to file a complaint with the MSME council. Obviously, they needs to have some kind of or you can also tell them your assessee, I mean your trader, I mean that your supplier, that look, in your certificate 45, 46, 47 is appearing, or if you have evidence, obviously, because you again it's a question of fact that you can prove that it is a trader. As an auditor, what I can do is I can take a MRL that basis so and so evidence. Assessee is saying that it's a trader, not but has obtained an incorrect registration, and that's why it is not covered by MSME Act. So you can go with that, but again you have to qualify your report basis that. But I will suggest that your assessee should talk to the supplier and get a particular certificate, a correct certificate. Neeraj ji, if auditor has obtained MSME certificate from supplier to external confirmation, okay, is it sufficient for him to report disallowances under if payment to party has not been made within due date? Please, again, Neeraj ji, we need to see whether this payment, not when you are talking about, let's say I'm talking about a situation where there is an outstanding on 31/3/2024, and that entire 31st of outstanding as on 31st of March 2024 is beyond due date under section 15. Yes, then obviously the disallowance has to be made. But let's say there is a case where due date is falling in next financial year, and then in that case you need to go in next financial year also, see whether the payment has been made beyond due date or not. If payment has been made beyond due date, then expense shall be disallowed. If payment has been made within due date, then expense shall be allowed. So these kind of exercise you need to do. How the date will be considered when no agreement is or invoice date for audit. Sir, in that case, you can take MRL from your client that what is the date of delivery of services. I'm talking about case of delivery of service. Or let's say there may be a situation when on invoice where it is mentioned that basis challan, then you can refer to the challan. Again, it's a question of fact. If let's say after every after any kind of procedure, you are not able to decide which is the actual date of delivery, in that case, you have to take MRL from your client, and basis that you can decide whether allowances to be made or disallowances to be made. There was one question on provision. What about provision? You see, if we look at section MSME, MSME will kick in only from the date of delivery of services. Sir, when you are making a provision, whether service has been done, whether service has been rendered, no. Service shall be rendered in the next financial year. So provision will not be covered per se. Let's take the last question. Sorry. There is a question from anonymous attendee. If I made payment in current year, how will the calculation interest be done, and is it mandatory to make provision interest? First, whether 43B is there or was not there, provision of interest as per MSME Act was always there. It's a different matter altogether that we never bothered. When I'm saying we, it means majority of the people. I'm not saying that everyone is falling under the same bracket or bucket. Majority of us were not providing any kind of interest, but because and this is the reason, please appreciate, this is the reason why this 43B has been introduced. So there may be a situation that payment has been done and payment has been made beyond due date, but within the financial year. So obviously 43BH may not have any impact, but as far as interest is there, yes, it needs to be made. And you can't say that simply the interest has not been demanded by the buyer. It need not be provided for. It needs to be. It is your duty to follow the law. As an auditor, I am saying. But yes, provision needs to, not only provision, disclosure also needs to be made. Please refer to MSME Act. Again, MSME Act, I told you in the very beginning, sir, it's a special provision. If you remember, all of us, they in at least in company's balance sheet, we always disclose what is the amount due to MSME. Is it because of Companies Act? Is it because of Schedule 3? No. All these disclosures are because of MSME Act only. And those disclosures are equally applicable to companies, LLPs, partnership firms, proprietorship firm, society, trust, whosoever it may be. It is applicable to everyone. And again, I told you in the very beginning, the interest provision needs to be made at a 3 times the bank rate as per, repo rate as per RBI. So effectively, it will comes around 23-24%, something like that, because the compounding needs to be done on the monthly basis also, rather than the yearly basis. GST hold by the assessee as per the agreement. Sir, again, I told you in the beginning, Rahulji, whatsoever may be the condition in your agreement, MSME Act shall always override. If let's say there is a, you see, let me tell you the solution. If there is a issue with the supply, you can raise the objection. So let's say you have raised the objection for 10 things, right? Give you an example. One of the objection has been removed. So at least there is another objection which is still pending. So if your GST is falling within that objection and that objection has been raised within 15 days of delivery, then obviously MSME Act shall not apply. But if let's say there is no objection and objection has been resolved, then obviously you cannot hold the GST amount. It needs to be paid. But again, the question is, will there be any disallowance? Since if let's say I'm following an exclusive method of accounting, do I post my GST amount to profit loss account? No deduction I have claimed. So in my humble view, it will not be disallowed. But yes, there will be issue in MSME Act for provision of interest. So with this, I believe already I have run out of time, at least 12 minutes past 6. So with this, I take leave from all of you. Thank you very much.